Do you want to learn the tools and strategies that can propel you to the next level in life? Do you want to understand how to maximize your fullest potential? Since 2001, Empower You has impacted and changed the lives of tens of thousands of people from around the world. And now we bring the life-changing experience to you. So welcome to the Empower You podcast with Brent and Byron, the podcast that delves into the ins and outs of the Empower You program and gives you a behind-the-scenes glimpse into what really goes on at these life-changing events.
Empower You hugs. So I know you've got a lot of opinions on this. Hugging is a big part of Empower You, a huge part of what we do. We mentioned earlier in episode 1, I think, the girl who hadn't received many hugs throughout her entire life, and she was saying how much love she felt from it. But why did you want to do an episode dedicated to hugs? Like, why is it so important to you?
It's important to me because I've seen the absolute power of hugging on hugging a lot in a short amount of time and what that does for people. Like, I've seen the transformations time and time again, universally, at almost like 100% success rate. Like, I know when people start to embrace the power of hugs, they feel better about themselves. And so I've actually typed out some really interesting stats and some information. I did some more research on hugging that I want to back up what I'm about to share. But in terms of hugging, so at Empower You, I know the power of physical touch. We do a lot of games and activities just to connect people. You know, as human beings, we all want to feel a part of something greater than us. We all want to feel connected. I remember a few years ago, one of my friends, Mark Crotty, who owns Breakfast Shirts, he said to me an interesting thing. He said, you know, I'm still very close to my 4 best schoolmates now, and he's in his late 20s. I think maybe he's 30, I'm not sure. But he said, my brother, he has way more connections than I ever had, but no friends. And I thought that was quite revealing. Is that so many young people have more connections, largely due to social media and the way that all works, but less real friends.
They have friends.
Yeah.
You know, I say in quotation marks or whatever, bunny ears. Like, they call them friends, but are they really friends?
Yeah.
Are they really having good conversations and hanging out? Like, they're just social media friends half the time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, you know, hugging is a huge part of Empower You. We only introduce it like at the end of the first day.
I forget that. It just feels like it's throughout the whole weekend, doesn't it? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we wait so long is it's hugging is out of people's comfort zones. I mean, when would you say, generally speaking, people hug others the most?
My first reaction is like funerals or like a death. Like, I'm so sorry.
When somebody's upset and they're feeling bad about themselves, and we hug them to comfort them. Now, does that comfort them? Absolutely it does. But there would be an argument to be had that if you always hug people when they're feeling sad, you are creating an association that hugs are connected to sad experiences. That's a generalization, of course, but I think you can understand why I make that connection.
Yeah.
What we do at Empower You is we go through a really powerful process at the end of the Saturday night. It's a board break. We get a piece of wood and we write on one side of the board all the things that are holding people back in their lives, essentially the negative way they see themselves or potentially past traumas that have affected them. And on the other side of the board, they write the person they want to be, their future self. So it's one side's negative in their past, the other side's positive in their future. It's a very cathartic process. And it's not so much about physically breaking the board as it's about committing and being honest about writing the things down. But when they break the board, what we do is we call it the anchor, and we get one of our team to hug the person who's broken the board. Now, when I say we get them to hug, they don't just hug for a second or two. We get them to hold in that hug.
After a huge emotional
Yes,
thing.
high.
Yeah.
Positive high. So they've broken this board. They're in a peak state. They're feeling great about themselves. And we lock that emotion in with a hug. So now we're trying to change the association that hugs are connected to positive experiences. Now, there are 6 human needs. One of those needs is love and connection. I might share this story actually.
Is this the one you shared? Yeah.
So when I was developing the Empower You program, I attended every seminar I could. I read as many books as I could, devoured CDs, DVDs, and I went along. I was invited along to a course, and it was run in the Hunter Valley, and it was for teenagers and young adults. So it's like, I think from 15 to 25-year-olds who had been physically or sexually abused. So it was very intense.
Yeah, heavy.
Yeah, heavy. There was about 50 people in attendance, and the weekend was great. A lot of amazing things, but there's one thing that happened over the weekend that I'll never forget. We had a small room. Everyone was sitting in chairs around the side of the room, looking in the middle of the room, and the presenter said, "Would anyone like to share their story? You know, a bit of their past experiences in relation to the theme of this." I keep getting this thing, the theme of the weekend. And so this girl put her hand up. She would have been about 16. And she spoke for about 5 to 10 minutes in some detail how between the ages of 5 and 8, she'd been repeatedly abused by her uncle. And as she shared this story, she got quite emotional, you know, kind of reconnecting with the trauma of her past. And as she did, she started to cry. At this point, I'm watching this, and this is all fine for me. I'm thinking, this is great. This is very cathartic. I'm a big believer in the value of crying, having good cry. It's a release of energy. And everyone else started to get triggered because they could connect their story to her.
Relatable, and yeah.
So quite a few other people crying. Again, at this point, I have no problems with this. This is all for me, for the work that I do. This is all quite healthy in moving through the pain. But then the presenter did something that, in my opinion, was reckless. And I would say he didn't know what he didn't know.
Yeah. He wasn't
intentional. No.
Yeah.
He said to the girl who's in this peak negative state, "Can you stand up and walk to the middle of the room?" So she does. She's crying. She's sobbing. And everyone else is crying. And then she's standing in the middle of the room. And then he says to everyone, "Can everyone stand up now and go and give her a hug?" So you have 50 people highly charged in a negative state all give this girl a hug. Again, from the outside looking in, you go, "Oh, that's really nice. That's really caring and nurturing." Here's what happened. What do you think that girl did after that every time she wanted attention?
Cry.
Yeah.
Sit down and feel sad.
Yeah.
She went, hug.
Yeah. She went in the corner, felt sorry for herself. She's cried, and then someone would go and console her. Now, on a subconscious level, meaning this girl doesn't have a conscious awareness of it, on a subconscious level, this girl is now connected. For me to feel love and connection from other people, I need to feel bad about myself first. Now, this is an extreme example. But what I'm trying to unpack here is how we associate things and what we do to connect the dots. And so for me, you want to experience love and connection in an empowering way. Hugging's the best way of doing that. Do you know that if you hug someone for longer than 7 seconds, you exchange endorphins? Do you know that when you hug someone for a period of time, what gets released in the brain is oxytocin, right, which is connected to happy experiences? They say, and I'm just going to read off some interesting stats now, that the average person needs 4 hugs a day to survive. You should be having 4 a day. I wonder how many people are even having 1 a day.
True, probably.
Right? You're going to have 4 to survive. You need to have 8 for just general maintenance. So 8 should be the minimum. And to grow in life, so to thrive, you need to be having 12 hugs a day. A day. Now, to empower you on a Sunday, if anyone has experienced the program, you know the elation at the end of the weekend. It's euphoric. People feel tears of joy. Many participants will say, "I've never felt better about myself in my life." Not just this month, this year, in my life. Why? Because generally on a Sunday, the average participant will hug 50 to 100 times in a day. Now, that's extreme. You're not going to hug 50 to 100 times a day. But what if you hug 12 times a day? 12 times a day.
We don't mean an in-out. Like, not like a quick,
No.
"Oh, hey, good to see you." These are like,
A heart-to-heart.
Yeah.
Heart-to-heart hug. You know, another interesting thing I want to share with you, that hugging will boost self-esteem because what it does is it connects us to self-love as well. It also, funnily enough, it increases circulation in soft tissue, so it's healthy for us. They even say that, you know, hugging is seen as a form of therapy, as extremely effective for healing sickness, disease, loneliness, and depression. And don't we need a lot of that right now? You know, there was a study done, a scientific study. They had 200 adults. I'm just going to read this now. 200 adults into 2 groups, so 100 in each group. The first group, there was romantic partners. They had to hold hands for 10 minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, they would hug for 20 seconds. That's all they did. Hold hands for 10 minutes, hug for 20 seconds. The next group, they sat in silence for 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, what they found at the end of that, the people in the first group showed greater reductions in blood pressure levels and heart rate than the second group. So it showed in their physiology that anxieties dropped, heart rate slowed down just from the act of holding hands, physical touch and hugging. Now, an interesting thing, if you hold a hug for an extended time, like let's say 2 to 3 minutes, that actually lifts one's serotonin levels. So it elevates your mood and creates happiness. So ultimately what I'm saying with hugs is people need to understand hugs are healthy for you. Hugs are good for you. Hugs should be a huge part of your life. And one of the reasons why people don't hug, and you could argue I'm more talking to males hugging males now, is that fear of rejection.
Or judgment.
You know, I know when I run Empower in Singapore, when I introduce hugs, they laugh. Like I'll hug someone on stage, like I might get you up on stage, let me show you a hug, and I'll do a hug, I'll embrace you, and they're like, you know, because it's outside of their comfort zone. So the easy thing to do is make fun of it. And the first hug we'll do is when they've broken the board. And they're always weird. It's like, because culturally they're not used to doing that. So they'll stand there like this and they'll just like tap you on the back and just all these awkward things. By Sunday night, after one day of hugging, so every time we come back from break, we'll hug 5 times. So they get in, by the end of it, people will hug and hug and hug and hug. If I can tell you one thing that I know for sure is that whether people hug regularly or never hug at all, once they start to hug, when they open their heart and lower that fear of rejection, worrying about how other people are going to respond to them, and they let down their ego, everyone, and I mean everyone, loves hugging. I've never had anyone in Empower You go through the experience, hug 100 times and say, I wish I didn't do that. Everybody's improved and better for hugging. It's something that all of us should be doing. I mean, imagine every day you started the day, you walk the street, instead of saying hello to someone, you hug them, you embrace them. Now, I know we're in COVID. It's like anti-touching. And hasn't that affected people's mental health? I think there's record number of people calling the suicide lines.
In Australia.
Like, you know, there's a clear correlation to the lack of connection and people's mental health deterioration. So if you're listening or watching this, when you finish watching this, go out and hug someone and give them a good hug, hold them. And when you all let them go, hold them a little bit more.
I'll say, as you know, on the other side of the board break, as someone who facilitates, how powerful it is when I think people forget how much we get out of it as facilitators as well. It's like if you do a good board break, we'll talk about that to everyone else. We'll after Empower You, I'll sit down and someone will say, that girl was the best board break I've ever done. She is incredible. And and everyone knows about you because you gave it your all. I think it's powerful. But, you know, if you do a good hug, like that's the best feeling as well for a facilitator. There's nothing worse than I've done some not bad ones, but I've done ones where people like, you know, don't even hug you back. Yeah. You just feel like you're just hugging them and you're like, oh, all right, I want someone else now. Like you don't even want to be here. And it sucks. It really hurts. You're like, we've just broken this board, and then they're just kind of like this. And their arms are down and you're like, oh. And then when someone like jumps up and or like cries, there's that boy from Byron and he crushed it. You probably remember him. He was one of the standouts. He got the gold star. Everyone kept talking about him. I did his board break and I remember like as soon as he broke it, he was like, this weight came off. He was like, oh, and he just like cried and just like, yeah, and screamed and jumps in your arms. And it's like, that's such a powerful hug. So like it goes both ways. So if I'm talking to people who've done the program here, like, you know, it's really powerful.
Look, I couldn't agree with you more. And I've just found that, you know, sometimes you can have a hug and you just sit in that hug and you hold them. And it's like, and then it gets a bit awkward, then it doesn't. It's like, it's really interesting, like the phases you can go through. But hugging breaks down barriers. It connects us. Like so important. You know, they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Let's have a new mentality. 12 hugs a day keeps the therapist away.
No, it's so good. But any final thoughts when it comes to hugging? Obviously, Empower You, you know, after every section, 10 hugs, 10 hugs, 10 hugs, 10 hugs, 10 hugs.
You can't have enough of them.
Yeah. And I'm only just now realizing, you know, all my associations with hugs are positive because of Empower You. And that was subconscious. Now it's conscious. But it's like, I totally associate hugging as a good thing, as it should be.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Great chat.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Empower You podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. For more information on our live events, please head to www.empoweryou.com.au. We look forward to having you join us again for the next episode of the Empower You podcast.